He spent our anniversary night with her in my dress. The custom red gown I had made was on his mistress in a viral video. She twirled as he kissed her neck and said, "This was meant for you." He told her I'd given up after the ring. Then recreated our first date, same meal, same toast. When I asked why, he said, "She reminded me of who you used to be." So I posted the receipts and dress tags too. When I first saw the video, I thought it was fake. Some cruel, elaborate prank maybe. But the longer I watched, the more I realized my stomach wasn't lying. My husband wasn't home that night for a reason. It was supposed to be our 7th anniversary. I'd spent weeks secretly having a red gown custom made. The color was deep wine, almost blood-like under certain light. I picked it because it was the same shade I wore on our first date at the Laurel Room in downtown Nashville, the restaurant where he said he fell in love with me. I even planned to surprise him with dinner reservations and a private table near the same window. But that night, he told me he had to work late. "Big meeting, can't reschedule," he said, kissing my forehead as he grabbed his jacket. I remember feeling a sting of disappointment but also guilt, like I was being clingy. So I just smiled and said, "Okay, we'll celebrate tomorrow." 2 hours later, my friend Rachel sent me a link to a viral TikTok captioned, "When your man makes you feel like the only girl in the room #anniversary vibes." And there he was, Evan, my husband of 7 years, sitting across from a woman in my red gown. Same neckline, same slit, same tiny flaw in the seam near the waist that the tailor promised to fix before I picked it up. She twirled in front of the camera while Evan, looking smug and drunk on attention, leaned in, whispered something, and kissed her neck. The camera caught his voice, barely audible but clear enough. "This was meant for you." The comments were exploding. "Couple goals. He's obsessed with her. That dress, OMG." I froze. I couldn't breathe. My first thought was that maybe she had a similar dress. Coincidences happen, right? But when she stood up to show it off, I saw my initials, the same embroidered monogram I asked the tailor to sew discreetly on the inside lining. The video cut to their table, the Laurel Room. My restaurant, my memory. He even ordered the same meal we shared on our first date, steak medium rare, truffle mashed potatoes, and creme brulee for dessert. Then came the toast. I could barely watch as he lifted his glass and repeated, word for word, the same line he'd said to me 7 years ago. "To the woman who made me believe in forever." When I confronted him the next morning, he didn't deny it. He just stared at me coldly and said, "She reminded me of who you used to be. You stopped dressing up for me. You gave up after the ring." That was the moment something in me snapped. Not rage, just a hollow, burning calm. So I did what any woman who's been publicly humiliated would do. I gathered the receipts, the tailor invoices, the payment confirmations, the dress tags with my name printed on them, screenshots of his messages to me about the surprise he'd planned for our anniversary. Then I opened my notes app, typed out a post, attached everything, and hit share. It went viral in under an hour. And that was before I added the final piece, the one thing that made sure he'd never show his face in public again. Evan and I weren't always like this. Back in 2015, we met at a rooftop bar in Nashville. He was this charming, confident guy in a gray suit, talking about startups and building something real. I was a grad student in marketing, waiting tables to pay rent. He offered to walk me home that night, and when we got to my door, he said, "You're going to ruin me in the best way." I laughed. I didn't realize that line would turn out to be prophecy. For the first few years, things were good. Like really good. He made me feel chosen, special, adored. He'd send flowers to my office just because, text me songs that reminded him of me, take me on random weekend drives just to watch the sunset. It wasn't perfect. He could be moody, sometimes controlling, but I mistook that for passion. We got married at a vineyard outside Franklin, Tennessee. He cried during his vows, told me, "I'll never stop trying for you." And I believed him. Everyone did, but right after the wedding, something shifted. He started criticizing small things, how I dressed, how I did my makeup, how I didn't care anymore. I was working full-time by then, managing accounts for a fashion brand, so yeah, maybe I wasn't in heels 24/7, but it wasn't like I'd given up. I was tired. I was building a life with him. Then the late nights started. Work dinners, client drinks, networking. At first, I didn't question it. He'd always been ambitious. But the more I looked, the less sense things made. I'd find perfume that wasn't mine in his car. Receipts for restaurants I'd never been to. Once, he came home smelling like coconut lotion and cigarettes, neither of which I used. Still, I told myself I was overthinking. That's what gaslighting does. It trains you to doubt your own instincts. The first real crack came 6 months before the anniversary. I found a lipstick stain on one of his white shirts, coral pink, the kind of shade I would never wear. When I asked about it, he said it was probably from a client's hug. Then he got angry, accused me of snooping, said I was creating drama. I started walking on eggshells around him after that. By the time our anniversary rolled around, I was desperate to make things work again. That's why I spent so much on that dress. It wasn't just fabric, it was hope. I thought if I showed him I still cared, maybe he'd remember how we used to be. When he told me he had to work late that night, I swallowed my disappointment and smiled, like a good wife. I even texted him a picture of the dress hanging by the closet with a little heart emoji. He never replied. Now I know why. He wasn't working. He was out playing perfect couple with the woman he'd been seeing for months, my replacement, wearing my damn dress. But back then, I still believed we could be fixed, until the internet showed me the truth. The morning after I saw the video, I couldn't even get out of bed. I just lay there staring at the ceiling while my phone blew up, texts, DMs, even missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. My stomach churned like I'd swallowed ice. By noon, the video had over 1 million views. People were tagging me, asking if it was me in the comments because of how eerily similar the dress looked to the one I'd posted about weeks earlier when I teased the anniversary surprise. Evan came home around 1 p.m., wearing the same black jacket from the video. He looked hungover but calm, like he'd just finished a long meeting. I was sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open to the viral post. "Anything you want to tell me?" I asked. My voice didn't even shake. He sighed. "You're making this a big deal." "You took her to the Laurel Room," I said. "You wore the same outfit from our first date. You gave her the toast you gave me. She's wearing my dress, Evan. You literally gave my anniversary surprise to your side piece." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, jaw tight. "You stopped caring. You stopped being fun. She reminded me of how you used to be, before you got boring." I swear, I didn't even cry. Something colder than sadness settled in me. I looked at him like he was a stranger standing in my kitchen pretending to be my husband. He tried to gaslight me again. Said the dress wasn't mine, that I must have misunderstood. But when I pulled up the receipt, the tailor's invoice with my name, time-stamped weeks before, the color drained from his face. Then, as if realizing there was no way to spin it, he muttered, "You're just mad because she looks better in it." That's when something inside me shifted. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just started collecting evidence. Every message. Every receipt. Every photo I'd ever sent of the dress in progress. I called Rachel, who worked in social media PR, and told her what happened. Her exact words were, "Oh honey, we're going to burn him to the ground with proof." That night, I stayed up until 3 a.m. compiling everything. I drafted a long post, not emotional, not messy, just facts, screenshots of the dress invoices, text where he told me to save the date for our anniversary, a photo of the monogrammed lining, and side-by-side screenshots of the viral video with the exact same detail. The internet did the rest. By morning, my post had exploded. Thousands of comments, women tagging their friends, people digging through her old posts, identifying her as Sophie, a 26-year-old wannabe influencer who had once posted about manifesting her dream man. The fallout was instant. Evan's boss called him in. His company, small, tight-knit, didn't want the bad press. The video and my post had turned into a local scandal, with people connecting it to their brand's anniversary campaign. Irony was on my side. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Because while he was busy deleting comments and pretending to be the victim of cancel culture, I found something in his emails that took this from betrayal to something much worse. Something that made my hands shake as I read it. And it wasn't just about Sophie. I was halfway through organizing more proof for my lawyer when I found it, buried in a folder labeled Work Docs Confidential. It was an email thread between Evan and someone named G. Maddox. At first, I thought it was business-related, but then I saw the subject line, Wedding Settlement Strategy Draft Narrative. My stomach dropped. The first email was from Evan, dated 2 weeks before our anniversary. It said, "Need to confirm we're covered if I file. She's emotionally unstable, likely to react publicly. We'll make sure she looks irrational first. Then the reply, document everything. You'll look like the calm, responsible one. The new relationship will help your case. Proof she moved on emotionally long before you did. I read that twice before it sank in. He'd been planning a divorce. He hadn't just cheated, he'd built an entire strategy to paint me as the problem. The anniversary dinner wasn't some spontaneous betrayal. It was a calculated move to humiliate me publicly, to make me look jealous, bitter, unhinged. He knew I'd see it. That video was bait. I checked the timestamps on the emails. He'd been discussing narrative control for months. In one message, he even wrote, "She's too focused on work, no longer affectionate. If I show that I tried, I'll get sympathy." The public angle helps with property division. That last part hit me like a brick. Property division. We'd bought the house together, but he'd pushed to put his name on the title first, saying, "You're not great with paperwork, babe. Let me handle it." Now it all made sense. The dress, the video, the timing. He'd weaponized the humiliation. The viral exposure wasn't an accident, it was a setup. I remember sitting at my desk, staring at my laptop, hearing his words in my head. "She reminded me of who you used to be." No, he didn't mean that. He meant she was useful. She was part of the story he wanted to tell. A bright, eager, younger version of me, perfect for his new chapter narrative. I called Rachel, shaking. I told her about the emails, read some of them out loud. She went quiet for a moment, then said, "He didn't just cheat, he framed you. That's sociopathic." That night, I confronted him one last time. I showed him the emails and asked, "Did you plan this?" He didn't even flinch. He just looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You were already gone, I just got ahead of it." That was it. That was the real Evan, the cold, calculating man behind the charm. And that's when I knew revenge couldn't just be emotional. It had to be surgical. So I called a lawyer of my own. Then I called a friend in digital marketing. Then another who worked in finance. Because if Evan wanted to make this a campaign, fine. I was going to end it like one, strategically, publicly, and in a way that left no doubt about who the real villain was. But I didn't expect what I found next. Something that changed the entire game and turned Sophie, the mistress, into an unwilling ally. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that damn video. Him whispering, her laughing, my dress catching the light like it was mocking me. But the anger helped. It kept me sharp. By morning, I had a plan. Step one was simple, control the narrative. Evan wanted me to look irrational, fine. I'd be precise instead. I deleted every emotional post, every story that even hinted at heartbreak. Then I posted one photo, me standing in front of the tailor's shop, holding the receipt, captioned, "Proof. Always keep it." That post alone got 200K likes in 12 hours. It wasn't rage, it was evidence. People started turning on him fast. I didn't need to scream. The truth did the screaming for me. Step 2. Find out who G. Maddox was. Rachel did some digging through LinkedIn and found out he was a divorce attorney. Not Evan's official lawyer, more like an off-the-record advisor. Turns out Maddox was known for coaching clients on optics, basically teaching men how to play the victim during breakups. The kind of guy who said things like, "Win sympathy first, then take assets quietly." Step 3. Reach Sophie. I didn't want to talk to her at first. I hated her. But then I found something that made me realize she might not know what she was part of. Someone had leaked her old Instagram stories to Reddit. There was one clip from before the anniversary dinner. She was crying in her car saying, "He said his wife already left him emotionally. He said I was helping him heal." It hit me. He'd used her too, so I DM'd her. I didn't accuse her. I sent screenshots of the emails. I said, "You were part of his plan, Sophie. You were just another prop." She didn't reply for hours. Then finally, "He told me you cheated first. That's why I agreed to do the video. I thought I was helping him move on." I didn't even know what to feel, but I saw my chance. We met 2 nights later, quietly, at a Starbucks outside the city. She looked smaller than I expected, fragile, scared, like she'd realized too late what she'd done. She handed me her phone. There were texts, dozens of them, Evan coaching her on what to post, how to caption things so the story looked organic. He even sent her screenshots of my old posts so she could mirror me subtly, same poses, same tone. He hadn't fallen for her, he'd been rebranding himself. That's when I told her my plan. Together, we'd leak everything, every text, every fake work email. every staged photo. We'd prove he orchestrated the entire thing. I'd use my contacts in PR to time it perfectly, right when his company was about to announce their new partnership deal. The goal wasn't to humiliate him, it was to ruin his credibility, his image, the perfect husband facade he'd built his career on. But Sophie wanted something too. "If we do this," she said, "I want my name cleared. People think I'm a homewrecker." I agreed, because for the first time she wasn't my enemy. We had a shared target. Over the next week, we compiled everything into a single document, the Evan Project. Every message, every timeline, every inconsistency. My lawyer reviewed it. Rachel crafted the press release. Sophie prepped her video confession. It was airtight. And on the night before we were going to post it all, I got a message from an unknown number. Just one line: "Don't trust her, she's playing both sides." Attached was a screenshot. Sophie in a hotel room, Evan sitting on the bed beside her. I stared at that screenshot until my hands went numb. Evan sitting on the edge of a hotel bed, shirt half unbuttoned, Sophie beside him, looking down like she was caught mid-conversation. The timestamp was from less than 24 hours ago. After all our planning, after she cried in front of me, after she promised she wanted to make things right. I wanted to believe it was fake, but deep down I already knew better. I called her, straight to voicemail. Then I texted, "What the hell is this?" No response. By midnight, I drove to the hotel listed on the screenshot's metadata, cheap chain off I-65. I parked across the street and waited, heart pounding so loud I thought someone would hear it. And then, at 12:43 a.m., they walked out together. Evan's arm was around her. She looked miserable. He looked smug. I didn't make a scene. I just watched, let the image burn itself into my brain, because I knew right then I was being set up again. The next morning, I woke up to a text from him. "I told you you'd make yourself look crazy. Thanks for proving my point." That's when it clicked. Sophie hadn't betrayed me, he'd played her again. The hotel meetup was him covering his tracks, baiting her into a talk so he could take a photo that made it look like she'd never turned on him. He wanted to poison my only alliance before the reveal. He knew what was coming. He must have seen us gathering evidence. Someone in my circle leaked something, maybe Rachel's contact or the lawyer's paralegal. But somehow, Evan had caught wind. And instead of damage control, he turned it into another layer of manipulation. It almost worked. For about an hour, I spiraled hard, deleted drafts, second-guessed every move, thought maybe I was losing it. But then Sophie finally called. Her voice was small, wrecked. "He said he just wanted to apologize in person. He told me you were already spreading lies. He made me think you'd twist everything." I told her I'd seen the photo. She started crying. "He recorded me. I think he's going to post it." And just like that, his real strategy became clear. Evan wasn't just trying to protect himself legally anymore. He was going to destroy both of us online, frame me as the vengeful ex and her as the desperate mistress who couldn't move on. He'd feed the story to a gossip account, then sit back while the internet devoured us. I sat there in silence for a long time until the fear drained out and something else took its place. Focus. Cold, steady focus. He wanted optics. I'd give him optics. Sophie and I met again the next evening in my car, both of us exhausted and done pretending. I told her we were going to flip the trap back on him. She looked skeptical until I explained the next phase. We'd feed him fake information. A decoy version of our evidence packet, one that looked damning but had a fatal flaw, a small inconsistency that would make it seem fabricated. We'd make sure he got his hands on it, leak it himself, thinking he'd exposed us. Then, when he tried to discredit me publicly, I'd release the real file, emails, audio clips, financial records, everything. It would make him look like exactly what he was. A liar so desperate to manipulate the truth that he'd incriminate himself trying to prove a forgery. But before we could even move, something unexpected happened. Evan's company announced an internal audit and suspended him pending ethical review. And the source who triggered it, a whistleblower from inside his firm, someone who'd seen the viral chaos and recognized his name from another case. Turns out, Evan's manipulations didn't stop at his marriage. He'd been using the same tactics on his clients, altering digital campaigns, stealing pitches, and pocketing bonuses meant for his team. Everything he'd built was about to collapse, and I hadn't even lifted a finger yet. The investigation cracked him open like a rotten shell. Once his company started digging, Everything spilled out: emails, side accounts, hidden invoices. But what chilled me most wasn't what he'd done professionally. It was why he'd done all of this to me. When you're married to someone for years, you think you know how their mind works. You think there's some kernel of love under all the cruelty. But Evan, he wasn't brokenhearted. He wasn't trying to save face. He was collecting narratives. I found out when one of his coworkers, a woman named Dana, called me privately. She'd worked under him in PR. Her first words were, "You need to know this wasn't just personal for him." She told me Evan had been pitching a book for months, a pseudo-memoir called The Optics of Love. How to rebrand your life after divorce. It was supposed to be half relationship advice, half image management playbook. He'd already secured a ghostwriter and was negotiating with a publisher. And here's the part that made my blood run cold. I was the case study. He'd written about a marriage that fell apart due to emotional neglect, and how he rediscovered himself through honesty and authenticity. There were entire chapters mirroring our real life, our dates, our wedding, our home, but twisted to make me sound like a controlling, frigid woman who resented his success. Sophie was mentioned too, the reminder that passion can return if you're brave enough to start over. The anniversary video. That wasn't romance. It was marketing. He'd planned it, filmed it, even told Sophie the clip might be used for a creative project once the book launched. He wasn't trying to humiliate me out of emotion. He was building content. My humiliation, my pain, our marriage, everything was just material for his story. Dana sent me PDFs of the proposal. I read it cover to cover. Every quote, every anecdote, every manipulated memory. And then, at the end, in his author bio, one line stood out. Evan Whitmore has helped dozens of clients reinvent their public image after personal scandals. His upcoming book shares the same blueprint that saved his own life. Saved his life. He'd been planning this for nearly a year, using me as the cautionary tale, Sophie as the redemption arc, and his own betrayal as proof of his growth. The video was never meant to be private. It was the trailer for his new persona. I sat there staring at that line, shaking so hard I could barely breathe. This wasn't love gone wrong. It was exploitation dressed up as self-discovery. And it hit me, slowly, sickeningly, that every tender word he'd said before the wedding, every moment he made me feel chosen, it was all practice. He'd been rehearsing how to look like the hero in someone else's story. There was no fixing this, no talking it out, no apology that could even begin to cover it, because he didn't feel guilt. He felt entitlement. When I told Sophie what I'd found, she broke down completely. He told me it was about forgiveness, she said. He said we were helping people. Helping people. Jesus. That's when I decided the revenge had to be more than exposure. It had to make him live in the wreckage of his own narrative. He'd wanted a rebrand. I'd make sure the only version of him the world believed was the one he actually was. A manipulative fraud who turned his wife's heartbreak into a product. And when I executed the final step, it wouldn't just end his career. It would end his story. When I finally pulled the trigger, I didn't scream. I moved like someone doing complicated surgery, methodical, awake, unemotional. The plan wasn't about spectacle. It was about closing every door he thought he'd built to walk out with everything. First, the company audit widened. Dana gave me internal emails showing Evan pitching the book idea as content strategy, not therapy, then coaching clients to manufacture scandals. Rachel fed the press the timeline showing he staged the anniversary video and coached Sophie on captions. Sophie posted the confession video we'd rehearsed, raw, eyes red, voice cracking. And then, when the haters started to swarm, I posted the hard files. The emails with G. Maddox, the Taylor receipt with my name and lining monogram, the hotel photo metadata proving Evan lied about where he'd been that week, and the PDF of his book Proposal with the chapter where he rewrote my life. I didn't post everything at once. I released it like a prosecutor builds a case, evidence first, then the motive, then the confession. By the time Evan woke up to the firestorm, he was already on every morning show as a cautionary tale. His publisher pulled the book. His company put him on indefinite leave, then terminated him for ethical breaches. The whistleblower Dana named leaked to the board. They announced an internal investigation and froze his access. Investors asked questions. Clients threatened to pull accounts. The man who once wanted to sell a redemption arc was stripped of credibility in 24 hours. Legally, my lawyer did most of the work. The draft settlement Evan had been so smug about suddenly looked fragile when his legal counsel realized we had emails that tied him to an intentional campaign to defame me for financial gain. We negotiated hard. I kept the house. He gave up the car. The prenuptial language he'd tried to hide in an email, where he attempted to put creative rights of personal narratives under his control, was declared unenforceable by counsel. The judge didn't love his optics either. But the sweetest part wasn't the bank account or the keys. It was the way his words, the ones he'd used to shape public sympathy, turned back on him. Audio leaked. One of his team members had recorded a private meeting where he coached junior staff to frame empathy while minimizing partner claims. He tried to call it an off-the-record training. No one bought it. I rebuilt slowly. I closed the tailor's shop for a week and cried in the fitting room over the dress that had been both a weapon and a shrine. Then I wore it to a friend's gallery opening. No fanfare, no camera. I wore it for myself, as proof that the thing he thought he owned was always mine. Sophie faded from the drama after testifying to what she'd been told. She apologized publicly, honestly, and the internet moved on quickly, cruelly. I forgave her in my own slow way because she'd been another collateral casualty. Dana moved to a different firm but stayed in touch. Rachel kept making sure my social posts were sharp, professional, and unassailable. The final, ridiculous flourish came months later when a small literary journal ran an excerpt of Evan's original proposal as an example of authorial malpractice. He emailed me, begging for a meeting, saying he'd been wrong and had a breakdown. I forwarded his email to my lawyer and added a note. "No meeting, you already had your book, I had my life." People ask if revenge felt like justice. It felt like reclamation. He tried to monetize my pain and manufacture my ruin. I took the receipts, the graft, the quiet moral work, and I turned them into proof. The last thing I posted was a photo of the tailor's receipt pinned under a paperweight on my kitchen counter, captioned, "Keep your receipts." The comments were small and private, not a stadium chant. That was the point. I sleep differently now, not lighter different, sharper. There's no triumphant parade, no poetic last line. There's a refunded deposit at a tailor who learned to be discreet, and a sense that I don't have to perform to be deserving of love. If Evan ever writes another book, he'll need a fact-checker. And the dress. I still keep it in the closet, folded carefully. Sometimes I try it on and look in the mirror, and I don't see the woman he tried to sell. I see me, red, steady, and finally not for sale. Kicker, I didn't want revenge to be loud. I wanted it to be exactly as loud as the receipts I left in his pockets.